Cool. So, welcome everyone to this Psychonautica panel, where tonight we'll be discussing one of the biggest topics that psychedelics tends to invoke, the question of if the very fabric of reality is based upon materialism or idealism. So, is matter the primary substrate upon which all of reality is built, or is consciousness itself the spark from which all things not only emerge but exist within? Is it possible it's a bit of both, or that there are more exotic options involving higher dimensions, simulations revealed by lasers, or whatever else jumps to mind? Well, that is what we're going to be unpacking here tonight. And to answer this question, I'm honoured to be joined by some of my friends and the finest minds from across the Psychetuber sphere. So let's just do a quick lap around the table to introduce yourselves, what your primary gig is within the psychedelic space, and whether you're a filthy materialist, idealistic hippie, or a fence-sitting pussy. And I'll get the ball rolling. So my name's Rob. I'm host of the YouTube channel Adeptus Psychonautica. And on the topic of materialism versus idealism, I tend to land somewhere in the middle. So I'll have to say I am indeed a fence-sitting pussy. And yeah, let's just go around the room, and I'll go directly to the right of me where I see Vivek. Go for it, mate.
Hello, everyone. So, I'm Vivek, and I make them trip reports and other assorted goods that people seem to enjoy for some reason. Very twisted minds, but we're all a bit of a twisted mind, aren't we? And I'm firmly in the camp of based and idealist pilled, and I'm sorry if you think I'm fucking crazy, but it is what it is.
Awesome stuff. It's good.
I am
Go for it, Jake.
My channel is Jake Knows Nothing, which is probably not the best moniker to go into a debate with, but I firmly stand on the hippie side as well, just kind of aggressively open to all truths. So that's the position I take.
Awesome. Let's go with Josie.
Hey, Josie. I'm a professional psychedelic researcher, somewhat known for founding various websites like Psychonaut Wiki, the Subjective Effect Index, the Replications Community, and I started a YouTube channel a couple of years ago that seems to be doing all right. I am definitely a materialist, although I want to make it clear that I am also happy to agree to disagree.
Very good. And let's try Hypna.
Hello, I'm Hypna. I do pictures and stuff, just general any sort of art I can get my hands on. For this side, I guess I consider myself a dirty fence sitter because pragmatically I'm a materialist, but that's not necessarily how I view things. But I think it's the best way for me to function. So.
At least it's nice and balanced, this discussion. We've got two in each side.
Gonna say, welcome to the fence sitters, mate.
And then I am Emily, and I am Josie's partner, wife, collaborator on the Josiekins channel. I do also have a little side channel where I upload a couple like silly things. I have a knitting video that I'm going to be putting up there soon. But primarily I work on the Josiekins channel. And I'm a materialist.
Filthy materialist.
Get out of here.
Well, like Vivek got to rebrand himself, so.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So awesome. It's a great time. We know who everyone is, where they stand. So let's get into the main topic. So I think first I'm going to give the stage to the materialists and give them a chance to, basically shoot our spirit animals, smash our crystals, explain why Mother Ayahuasca is not real. So yeah, maybe Josie and Emily, over to you. And then once you've laid out your case for why you think reality is the way it is, we can all take a stab at it.
Yeah, did you want to go first, or shall I, Josie?
I can go first, I guess. So I guess I have a lot of experience with psychedelics, and I started out pretty agnostic on things such as whether or not they connect your consciousness to a higher dimension or anything like that. And the more I have tripped, the more it becomes clear to me that the psychedelic experience is a product of the human brain. And I don't think that devalues the experience. I think DMT entities are essentially the psychedelic equivalent of dream characters, but comprised of geometry to give them that hyperspatial aesthetic. I've never heard of a legitimate example of, say, a DMT entity giving someone knowledge about the external world that they didn't already have, or that they couldn't have gained through a sort of epiphany in the moment. And I just tend to view the world through Occam's razor. I think the brain is the most powerful supercomputer in the known universe, and that there's no reason why it couldn't generate hallucinations that seem more real than reality. I haven't seen a good explanation for that, so I tend to go for the simplest explanation, which is when you take hallucinogens, you hallucinate.
That's exactly what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
Love hallucinating me.
We all do, mate. It's fine.
It's pretty good,
Do you want to add anything onto that, Emily?
I kind of want to go in a slightly different direction in terms of my argument for materialism. So I think it might be useful to let people approach that first, not gish gallop.
Okay. Well, let me have a first stab at it, because I think as like a bit of a fence sitter, it might be. Let me just try and give my own sort of take on why I'm a fence sitter, because I mean I am quite literally a fence sitter. I do kind of have one foot dangling in both camps here, because I would agree with what you just said, Josie, but I think this kind of this idea of that the sort of the transcendent experience of psychedelics has to render back into something like information, and like, okay, well, if you are literally traveling to another dimension, then show me what's written on the wall in the next room, or find some piece of information that you didn't know before, like, what is the location of the secret Russian missile base, or something like that. That's kind of like not what it's about, in the same way that I wouldn't expect my emotional intuition, which I think is very real, to be able to provide me with a kind of a piece of hard data like that. So I guess that's the first challenge that I would put back to, are you not somewhat, asking for something that is not part of that sort of paradigm?
So say you meet an entity that claims to be an all-knowing deity. Sure, it might not know the location of a Russian missile base, but it should be able to answer math questions. And doing experiments with this with my friends, asking DMT entities math questions, they don't seem to be able to answer those questions any better than a person would be sober. If anything, worse, because I mean their brain is currently on psychedelics. So, and just the arrogance of the DMT entities, when you start pushing for questions, they're constantly dodging them. I know people say, oh, if you're so arrogant to ask these DMT entities questions, but if an ant tried to ask me a question and it did it in English, a language that I could respond to, I would at least try and answer. I wouldn't continuously dodge questions in the exact same way that a dream character does during a lucid dream. I guess some people might argue that lucid dream characters are also real, but I think the brain just renders simulations much like a virtual reality game, and just seems to be how it works when I interact with it.
Does anybody else want to take a stab at it?
Actually, I have a thought on the when you're talking about emotional intuition, which you perceive as real. To me, that is a real thing, but it's just a subconscious process that the brain does.
Yeah, but I think one of my problems with the kind of it's just a subconscious process is it kind of distills down something which in itself is fairly unexplained, expansive, and amazing, and then does a bit of a kind of hand wave and says, well, it's just that. So I mean, and I think this really comes down to the core of a lot of this this kind of topic with the materialism versus idealism. The very fact that we are all here having a conversation and understanding each other, and not just being sort of mindless sort of meat automatons, is itself some kind of amazing thing, which is so mundane. Like everybody who we've ever met does this, that we just come up with this, like, oh, it's just that. And similarly for things where they have an emotional core to them, there are things which I will do in the name of my family, which are just unimaginable in any other circumstance. I will do them in the service to my emotions. And if I told you that I love my family, we'd all accept it. But just to sit down, like, it's just an emotion. An emotion itself is like, what the hell? It's something kind of like unexplained. You could say it's a hormone, it's a survival mechanism, could be, but it's still something. It feels like something more expansive is going on. So, I mean, I would kind of agree to kind of more or less everything that's being said, but it's still, by saying it's just consciousness or it's just an emotion, I think it leaves the door wide open to any other sort of idealistic thing. So that if someone, if we're talking about something like hyperspace and that consciousness persists beyond the body, and that there's actually a network of hyperdimensional consciousness intranet going on above us, and that's what we're tapping into, then I can sort of agree that, I do believe that consciousness is something that as of right now is localized to me. But I also have experienced that it's not localized to me, and I cannot not have that experience. It seems to me like it's both, and don't worry, I'm not going for we are meat TVs and I'm receiving a signal kind of thing. But I have entertained the possibility, while being completely off my fucking chops, that consciousness could be acting as like some in a similar way to some kind of field, as in like sort of like in the same way like gravity or something, and that I am an instance of it. But then once it escapes from my brain afterwards, then it will rejoin the sort of the intranet of consciousness. And I appreciate that's wacky as fuck. So I'm totally stealing Vivek's and Jake's thunder here, but that's what us fences, we just get to dive into all camps. And but yeah, that's what I mean. I've gone on a bit of a ramble there, but I think it's the just consciousness or just emotions that doesn't satisfy for me. I think it's like, why just?
Me neither, because I think that's the reductionist aspect. And I'll just say here that my stance is not me trying to argue anything or convince anyone. A lot of what I'm going to say is just purely based on my experiences of what it means to be consciousness. So obviously I'm of the opinion that the universe, I am the universe, I am consciousness. I'm exploring myself through a limited form, through you guys. The same consciousness behind my eyes is the same consciousness behind your eyes, but it doesn't stop there, because then that would just be reducing it to this is what it is. So for me, the rabbit hole goes infinitely deep. So of course, there's this physical thing in front of me, but from my perspective, there is no distinction between myself right now and that. For me, the mind doesn't end at the brain. The mind is everything, and everything is universal mind. And the whole fun and game of reality is that the universe, infinity, God, whatever you want to call it, it's all pointing to the same thing. And it's quite literally, for me, this is through my whole life experience, from being an atheist, like a staunch materialist atheist that I now realise in retrospect was coming from a place of pain, where I was like, oh, if I experience pain and suffering, how can there be a God? How can there be this? How can there, like, it must just be like what it is. It's just that, innit? And then my first ever ego death experience, which I didn't understand for years and years and years, there was no me. There was no sense of physicality. It just was. It just is. It was oneness. And if I experience an entity, rather than me saying, oh, this is an entity, this is like an other, this is something else, I don't see it as something else. I see this as just another version of myself talking back to me. Because quite literally, whatever that is me. I've had so many experiences of being at a festival on psychedelics and just trying to reduce that barrier of like, all right, what is other? And I'd just stare at someone and I'd look at them, and as the more I became conscious of what I was looking at, chipping away at the ego, because obviously the ego's like, oh, this person is that, this person's got these life experiences, and I'd look at them and look them straight in the eyes, and I would recognise personally, obviously everyone has different perceptions, but I'd look in their eyes and I'd be like, this is me looking back at myself through another limited format. And obviously right now, me talking to you, there's this idea of other. But if I was super highly conscious, I mean, to be fair, I've done this thing where I was like, I mean, most of these experiences I've had have come through sort of chemical influence. And then I was like, right, okay, let's look into how this can be induced in other methods, and it actually can. And I was like, right, let's start exploring it. Boshed out the sensory deprivation tanks, smashed them, and literally I got to the point where I was like, right, this is me inducing that higher level of consciousness through my own mind. So that's why I thought, right, obviously you can take something physical, like a chemical, but what is that actually doing? It's like, to have the dream of being physical, to be grounded in a reality, you have to have that illusion of like, oh, I'm taking this thing that is inducing this experience. Because if there wasn't that rule within the game of life, then I wouldn't be able to experience myself in this limited form. But for me, personally, when I've had these experiences and I have had literally no body, no ego, no I, no sense of self, just isness, there's no going back for me. And there's no scientific study that can tell me, right, that could come out in 100 years, it's like, oh, well, actually, it's this thing in the brain that's producing this thing that makes this experience. And I'm like, right, well, I just think you've just not gone deep enough, and the rabbit hole goes infinitely deep. And I'm not saying I've gone deep. I'm literally still at the tip of the surface, because infinity is just incomprehensible to grasp at this level of limitation that I'm currently experiencing. Let's go.
Awesome.
Right, let's get the straitjacket on now.
Right, it's gold on and yeah, I mean, Jake, do you want to?
Yeah. If I can jump in just for a second here, I just want to. First of all, once again, it's an honor talking with all of you guys. I feel like a real little fish in a big fucking pond right now. So it's all love, but yeah, I definitely, to kind of further the point of this not being like the reductionist answer, or the materialist answer not being satisfying enough for me. I feel that way as well. And to kind of specifically pinpoint even the analogy or comparison to characters in a dream, I feel like that's another label that doesn't necessarily tell me anything. That's just calling attention to a whole other facet of consciousness that we don't fully understand or know nothing about. And to me, that seems like a band-aid of just kind of like, oh, let's not think about that. Let's just give it a name. Let's use a container to put all these crazy human experiences in, just slap one word on it and write that off and move on and say that it's kind of fleshed out. Not saying that that's the full extent of the argument being presented, but a lot of times for me, it doesn't fully meet up to my own personal experiences, exactly like Vivek was talking about, just these insanely visceral personal experiences. It doesn't do it justice to write it off as a dream, and that's coming from someone who has had equal value in my dream states as I have had in the DMT state, or psychedelic sensory deprivation, whatever the case may be. I kind of feel that they're all in the same pantheon, or however you want to term it. One point that I wanted to make, just to kind of get a pulse on a better understanding of how everyone's approaching this. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Shane Moss, this comedian who talks about DMT famously on Comedy Central, and he has this really famous kind of viral experience where he has this relationship with the DMT entity, this purple girlfriend that he has in another higher dimension, and he introduces his friend to DMT without no prior knowledge. No, he didn't want to taint the experience at all or bring any biases into it, so he didn't tell him anything, and just instructed him on how to break through on DMT. And his friend ended up meeting this girl who was communicating back to Shane this, like, there are experiences that seem to be coming from these substances that aren't explained in our current models of reality, unless you are agreeing that there is some sort of high consciousness, right? Either there's a higher dimension that we are able to see and all agree upon as seeing, because if we're seeing the same thing, or we all have some sort of connected consciousness that we aren't recognizing fully, and that is how these ideas are being passed around, and we are able to hallucinate the same things. But I'm just curious as to what the materialist viewpoint is, or explanation is, on a phenomenon like that, or even just the group hallucinations and ayahuasca ceremonies. And what's the explanation on that?
You asking me or Emily or either of us?
Anyone who's not a hippie, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, you can take that one, Josie. And like a lot of the points that have been discussed right now, it's kind of ironic because it's kind of coming at it from I'll get to mine. It'll probably be like a whole separate segment of the conversation. But go ahead, Josie.
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with almost all of the things you guys said. I'm down with panpsychism or consciousness being a property of everything in the universe. I would just see it as another process like gravity. I don't think we need to explain gravity with magic, so I wouldn't feel that way about, I don't know, sort of some universal conscious field if that were a thing. I also agree that the separate self is an illusion, and that when it comes down to it, we are literally the universe experiencing itself through this particular point in space and time that happens to be your mind-body system. As for experiences of group hallucinations, I'm perfectly open to there being things beyond what science understands. I think that human brains probably sync up to a much greater degree and communicate with each other on a subconscious level than modern science is currently aware of. I think mirror neurons definitely point in that direction. I suspect that human beings communicate with each other via body language in a way that is not consciously or scientifically understood. As for the purple girlfriend thing, I don't know, the first time I tried DMT, I met a purple goddess face in the sky, and when you look into the statistics of the entities that people meet, female goddess is the most common entity. Purple was a common color scheme that I experience on psychedelics. I think that human brains are much more similar than people give them credit for, and it makes sense that these experiences pop up. I somewhat believe shared hallucinations are a thing, although I do expect that there is some sort of exaggeration as to how much they were actually synced up after the fact. I can't really comment on a secondhand anecdote from like a comedian that I've never heard of, but sure, I'm open to that.
Where's my
being
purple
a thing.
girlfriend at?
Who
she
knows?
behind me? Oh shit! Can't
It's
see
a
behind
bit
me because
small
there's nothing
DMT.
behind me.
Yeah, and when it comes down to this just argument, I don't see it that way. Just saying that something is a result of physical process doesn't reduce the significance to me, and I think it's kind of just an emotional response to somebody saying that something is a result of a physical process. I think the psychedelic experience is unbelievably profound and has extreme historical significance. So I'm agreeing with most of what you guys are saying. I just don't believe in magic.
And I definitely do. I think that it's almost like I think it's like a chicken and egg argument almost, because from right, yeah, I love the egg theory, but from my perspective, reality is being generated from within me, and I feel like a lot of times the explanations that materialism presents is on flipped, where we are looking towards the material world to get our answers, where I'm saying that's subject to change. We know how much objective things are subject to your reality and your perception of reality. So yeah, I like you said exactly. Like I agree with 99% of the cases being made. I agree that reality is more or less being generated by these different chemical processes or electrical processes. I came from that background, but it's just hard to have these experiences and then still fall back on just the limited human language we have as being satisfying to me.
For my own personal journey, I just think like the way I've evolved through it. So just from when I was younger, I was like, right, I'm staunch materialist. Then I was like, okay, I'm slightly more agnostic. I've just had this ego death experience where I literally went beyond myself and experienced like infinity. And then I was like, right, what the fuck's going on here, mate? And then now I've got to another point of my own perspective and evolution of it. And it's constantly evolving. When I'm 90 years old, what sort of perception am I going to have? I don't feel myself. I don't feel like I'm going to make a reverse. I'm like, oh, well, it was actually just materialism all along. Like for me, that would be going backwards. But this is very important to say that there is no higher or lower perception. Like as we've all just agreed here, we all have very different beliefs, but we all acknowledge that life is beautiful, it's profound, and it's a gift. It's just the lens at which we perceive it having been produced. So that's what was my big problem. And I see this a lot. Obviously, I obviously focus more on the hallucinogenics and the mystical visions and experiences, transcending the self, etc. And I have an equal amount of problem with the people who are like, well, that's just brain stuff, innit? I have an equal amount of problem with them as I do with the people who are like, well, you've just not gone deep enough, man. You've just not experienced infinity like I have. And I was like, mate, this is just like two sides of the ego just at war with each other. Realistically, no matter what your perspective is, you've got to respect the fact that everybody has different life circumstances. Everyone's got varying different amounts of brain chemistry. And I've got super fucking spiritual mates who like are quite literally on the materialist side that Josie and Tremello are accounting for. And it doesn't mean that I can be like, I should shut myself off from that. If anything, we should be open-minded to all perspectives. And that's why I don't think there's a higher or a lower. I think truth is extremely relative. Even though I do believe for me, there's an absolute truth that I definitely have not experienced at all. It does seem that since we are so very different, but also the same in a sense, relative truths really are a thing. Like, I've experienced telepathy. Me and my mate experienced telepathy, and it was so weird. We were like, well, is he even my mate or am I him? Ah, fuck knows, mate. But I literally I was just there, and then I became conscious, and he, or me, or whatever he is, became conscious that we were both talking to each other at the same time. And instead of me being like, oh, that's Cam, which was his mate, oh, that's Cam speaking to me in my own head, I was like, no, this is me transcending my limited form and realising that I am him talking to myself. But you have to have some form of like, this is why, again, psychedelics are the shortcut to experiencing this, because I mean, you could do with like 40 years of meditation. I could literally stare at my wall for like 3 days straight, and I'd probably like the distinction between me and the wall would disappear. But psychedelics are the fastest way to get there, because it's sort of, they're just like consciousness amplifiers, whether you think they're material or illusory. They literally do take you to another level, and it's ineffable. It's not like your normal sober human existence. But I don't think it's the material itself producing this. I don't think it's the brain that's like tricking itself into believing it. I think that reality itself is the grandest, most deep, most incomprehensible hallucination there is, and that hallucination is just like a visual hallucination of just like a fractal is just one very, very, very small fraction of what the word hallucination appears in the meta sense. And that for me, reality is one giant hallucination, because I mean, why the fuck not?
Well, I've got a few questions. I just want to try and pin Josie in on. Just before I do, Hypno, do you want to come in, mate?
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't disagree with a lot that's been said. Like, I essentially have had, certain profound experiences of unity and oneness, and like, I do believe that like everything is consciousness. Like, the whole spiel of that. But at the same time, like, the reason I consider myself like a pragmatic materialist is kind of, where do you go from there? What do you do in regards to like people socially, politically, and all of that? And I don't feel like I feel like I've seen in sort of new age and hippie communities some of the nicest people you've ever met, but then also some people that use the like, well, I'm everything to justify a lot of very like selfish, egotistical behaviors as well. So
yeah, I fully agree with that.
I'd like to essentially like have this ground of stuff that I believe to be like the quote unquote ultimate truth or something like that, but also kind of look at things from like, so what do I even do with that? Like, and I don't think I think there's utility in attempting to understand if there is like a studyable metaphysical layer to things. But in terms of
like a laser.
Fire in my laser.
Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get to the laser. I've got that in the notes for later.
We love laser beams, yeah.
Yeah, like, I guess for me it's just like more of like, what do you even do with it? And I don't think that reducing conscious experience down to chemicals and stuff like that necessarily does make it any less profound. Like, if we correlate certain chemicals in the brain with love, it doesn't make love any less meaningful to humanity. So That's why I'm kind of on both sides of this, even if I do believe in some metaphysical aspects, and I might go into like one example of that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No, just to kind of I feel the same way that you stated it. Where what do I do with that? Where do I go with that information? If we are able to pinpoint the exact chemical chain of reactions or whatever it is that we can pinpoint as being the emotion of love. Now what? What am I supposed to do? How does that change my life or improve it?
Yeah,
at all?
No one sits around being like, well, I'm certainly experiencing a lot of oxytocin in my brain right now. Like, they experience love. And so, like, you can be too reductionist about, like, the materialist aspects of things. Not anyone here in particular.
Reductionism is fine as long as it's not making you unhappy. That's the thing for me.
Yeah.
Like, have your own perspective, but if your perspective is putting into this nihilistic cesspit, then you really need to sort that out.
But also, I think we need to, like, separate out the... we can identify the molecules behind something. So we can look at a DMT molecule or an LSD molecule, and it doesn't really say anything about the experience. So
no.
Even if we did identify the love molecule and said that this thing absolutely has generated my feelings towards my entire family, it still doesn't. I mean, it says that that's the root cause of it, but it doesn't actually say anything about the experience or whether there is actually a transcendent love field, of which, again, I'm a localized instance of.
That's why, for me, the matter, the physical, the physical love, the serotonin, or the pleasure chemical, dopamine. That's why, for me, it's secondary to the primary cause of it is the love. Like, that's just, again, I'm getting really weird with this sort of grounding yourself to the dream and all that. But quite literally, how can I be this finite thing if there is not some physical grounding in a sense? Like, oh, look, because if there was no right, how am I going to get around this? Right. So,
I'm going to say, do you want me to write this in? How can I be this finite being? You've got to finish the sentence. Go on.
Right. So I'm this finite being. For me to believe that I am finite, there has to be every single area has to be filled in. All the blanks have to be filled in, because if one blank wasn't filled in, I'd break out the matrix and realize I'm infinity. But when you take when you when your consciousness becomes heightened, the dream itself or reality becomes more illusory. Like, I've taken loads of LSD and my hand literally melts away because I'm in that state, that heightened state of being where there's less grounding me to physicality. So you're becoming more and more and more unlimited, to the point where you become so unlimited, you have these full-on breakthrough awakening experiences where you're like, oh, right, I never was Vivek. I was just everything. I was just infinity. Obviously, I'm just trying some serious mad shit right now. But yeah, this is just all I'm saying is that this has happened to me, and there's absolutely no going back. And I can guarantee a lot of people who watch this can also agree. But the most important thing about this perspective is that you should never think you are beyond another person. This is the problem I see with a lot of these like spiritual gurus and people who take psychedelics like all the time. Like, they think they've figured it out, but actually, in a sense, you can become more deluded, like, oh, whatever, you might have experienced absolute truth, but you're always going to come back to this right here, physicality, because, let's say, from my perspective, you're imagining the dream, you're always going to come back to the dream until it ends via physical death or mahasamadhi, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, the best thing is to be rational, because I think, yeah, you can be a rational materialist, but you can also be a rational sort of idealist as well, and you have to have that balance, or else you're going to lose it, and you're going to lose that connection with reality itself. And even though obviously say I'm purporting that reality is yourself, you've got to maintain the fact that, like, there will always be the separation of illusion while you are this limited form, and if you forget about that, well, you're going to have a bad time. I have no idea what
the amount of comments that we've
Okay.
The amount of comments that we've gotten on the channel of just like, you clearly aren't open-minded enough because you're not seeing things exactly from my certain perspective. It's a lot. But yeah, you can go.
Well, I mean, that's why I kind of, in the intros, I do use this to like filthy, filthy material, because I think we've all had comments of that sort of nature. I mean, I think I'm fairly out there in terms of some of my ideas, but I get called a filthy materialist all the time, and I'm fine with it. I'm happy to wear that because it's somewhat true. But yeah, I mean, some people do get very pissy on it. And another classic which I've had just this week, we shouldn't get too derailed by comments, but it's hard when you're talking to other YouTubers, it's hard not to go in there. But
I got called the mouthpiece of the Antichrist the other week, and that was like my most defining moment, I think.
It's badass.
Yeah,
well, I'm always getting enlightened people wouldn't ever do this. Like, when did I ever fucking say I was enlightened?
But also, why is there a rule for what enlightened people should do? Like, again, it's just the ego talking, isn't it?
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump in.
Do it.
Okay, so we've been kind of dancing around what the kind of crux of my position is with materialism. I don't think that everyone needs to be materialist. I don't think that it's wrong to feel a different way. But I think that the materialist perspective is essential to exist because that is if we don't just stop there. Like I'm saying that, you know, like having an emotional intuition is a process in the brain. I'm not saying, oh, therefore it's not worth studying. Like these things are very complex. These things can be studied. We are learning more about this. And especially like a lot of the science is very stupid, is not very good at incorporating the phenomenology of the actual experiences that people have. And so they're very limited, very like irrational in that way. And so, but when we do have people that are really getting into that and looking for those answers, looking for what is happening, and it's not a chemical, it's not a brain receptor. It's like, it's very complex. It's a whole mash of different things. And that's why people are so unique. But if people have seen the geometry video, something that was, for me, very immensely exciting when we were working on that video is finding this research where people had, like back in the 20s, had taken LSD in their science offices and made notes of the visuals that they were getting. And then mathematicians used that information to make predictive theories, or what appears to be predictive theories about things that are happening in our brains, the structures of these neurons. And if we aren't approaching things, if no one is approaching things with that kind of perspective, we're not going to learn these things. If anyone is hand waving or reducing to just kind of like, oh, it's just brain stuff, or oh, it's just magic, we're not going to find these answers. So it is essential for this perspective to exist.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Big ups.
Can I just jump in and say something controversial?
Sure.
I've loved everything you just said, but just to play devil's advocate, not that I don't, I would say that it's not essential in just so much that like you can have experiences outside of human language, and so much of what we're talking about is exactly that, where it's so profound and so large of an experience that it's just even the few words that we've made up in the community to try and explain things does no justice to it. Not even the tip of the iceberg. And yet we can still have these full-fledged profound experiences that will change our lives forever, and those are completely outside of human language, completely outside of even being able to be reduced in a scientific light yet. And I would argue that those are essential for existence, and yet that's completely outside of the realm of anything materialist yet. And I would say just the fact that humans, right, but just the fact that we exist now, without having had all of that stuff, that we've made it this far as a human species, just experientially, without having to, you know, codify everything, write everything down, name everything. We were able to experience the full spectrum of temperature, hot and cold, just by dipping our toes in the lake and sitting by the fire, and we could fully understand those laws of physical nature without having a single word for it. And I think, not to go on a rant,
okay,
but I think of...
Dogs don't have any language at all. Are you saying that because they don't have language, they don't experience things?
No, I'm arguing that exact point where dogs don't have any system of studying things or reducing things in a scientific capacity, and yet they have a full spectrum of experience and consciousness, and so I'm arguing not that it's not beautiful and interesting.
Are you suggesting that materialists think that?
No. What I'm suggesting is just that it's not essential. Like, we've all existed and had these profound experiences without needing to define it with human language or have a scientific explanation, and I've had immense satisfaction from that. And that's all I'm saying. I'm just saying that it's not an essential
if you don't have
method.
Yeah, if you don't have an inclination to gain knowledge, then just continue being an idealist. Do your thing.
No, that's not
No
what I'm
problem.
saying.
Can
You
I
can
ask the
have knowledge
materialist
outside
question?
of human language. I don't know why we need to be insulting about it.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
just
developing new language. Oh no. I was just making this a joke. No problem. Like I was just being sassy. But we are developing new
Sassy
language
man.
for this. We are like trying to find ways to put these things into words. That's something that me and Josie have been working on for a long time. This is something I'm very passionate about, and like there's all kinds of things that we used to not have language for, and something that people don't tend to recognize in their day-to-day experience is that language is inherently reductive. And like the word love is not encompassing what it is. Yeah, so, but like the idea that we can still communicate to each other about love because we have developed a terminology for it, even if it's not encompassing everything. We can do that same thing with these other experiences and be better at communicating with each other about them. And even if they're not encompassing the entire thing, we can still use that to communicate with each other and learn more. And that's part of what's so exciting about psychedelics right now, in this very time.
Well, can I just chime, because there's something you said earlier, Emily, and I just wanted to sort of offer a counter to that. I think you described materialism as being essential, as being like the essential kind of view to viewing this. And I suppose one way of looking at that is, if materialism is essential, then basically why would consciousness exist at all? Because if material was the essential element, then everything that is happening is just cause and effect of neurons and electrons and tracing back to minute particles. All of this just came into being at the point of the Big Bang. So even this conversation that we're having now is just a causal effect. So since basically we're all everything that's happened would, if we had sufficient computing capability, would be completely predictable and we could trace it back and follow its path, then why would consciousness need to exist at all? So I think
it doesn't need to, but it does, and that's amazing. Somehow all of this turned into this, and that's incredible, and I love that.
Where does the world go when I die, though? That's the thing. Is there a world? And I can't prove that, because subject and object are so intertwined. And this isn't me saying, again, it's law, it's consciousness, but I'm quite literally sort of adding on to that point that there's a symbiotic relationship between both. So that's exactly why I can understand why someone's a staunch materialist or a staunch idealist, because there's so much validity to both of them. And again, it's just me going back to what I was saying before. It's just the lens via which you perceive the world, based upon your circumstances, based upon your experiences. And this is why this debate is amazing, but we will never get to absolute truth through words, like we say, because they are inherently reductionist. And everything I've just said, all the wacky shit I'm saying, is just me doing my best to articulate what I've directly experienced, and the only way to experience that is via consciousness, and that's why I'm sort of going down the rabbit hole of whatever I'm on about.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I don't think, totally. The point here isn't not necessarily to get to absolute truth. It's more just to sort of vocalize why we believe the things that we believe in the sort of
And it's beautiful to discuss all this, isn't it? Because it's great to just hear everyone's perspectives, and you get an idea of like how we all come to these ideas anyway. Because you're not born with them, are you? They just develop through your time on Earth. You as a person.
Well, still, I mean, if we can agree then that our existence, it could be some sort of causal effect, then we still get to this point of consciousness emerging, which I think none of us are going to doubt. We're all here talking to each other.
Some days,
it does emerge.
Sometimes I'm not here, mate.
Sometimes I have doubts.
Well, it does seem to emerge in a way that does have this kind of sort of what could be deemed a magical quality to it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's magic, but it's clearly something unexplainable is happening. So then why
it's not
why
magic,
but
it's the essence of the word magic. That's my perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but then also that then seems to leave the door open to further hyperdimensional things happening or whatever
alien
sort of
boys.
Whatever's going on in the sort of psychedelic woo-woo sort of community. So it's I can see why that door gets opened, and I think it's quite. I don't know. Is there a way to shut that? I mean, I suppose let's go. Why would you plant on the materialist side rather than the fence-sitting side?
Are you asking that to the group or a specific side?
Specifically to Josie and Emily.
I I tend to presume that the simplest explanation is probably the more likely one. So I think that materialism is probably more true than idealism. I don't think we can ever really know that for certain, but just given all the evidence we have, I think the materialism is more likely to be true.
And I'm not like anti-idealism per se. Like
Same.
there are some ideas with that I not necessarily like fully believe, but I entertain, I have fun with it. But I think that it's just essential to have the materialist perspective. And I think it is the one that's most valuable to me, certainly.
Oh, I mean, I totally agree. I think particularly in terms of what you guys are doing, and also just in terms of being able to have a common language. I think, I mean, we've got to have some things we agree upon, and I think here's something where certainly where I've rubbed up against the psychedelic community in this kind of like anything goes. Well, anything goes because anything goes, and so therefore any theory or idea is as valid as any other, and I don't think that's necessarily the case, and I think in some cases these can be sort of destructive.
Yeah.
And that's where I personally try and keep everything sort of like grounded within the human experience, so that whatever happens afterwards, or is happening in parallel, or is happening in other dimensions or whatever, fine, but I'm reasonably sure that at least this is happening to me now. So I'm going to kind of work on this basis rather than sort of, go staring at the wall for 3 days with Vivek and...
Oh, mate, it's class. I'm going to be doing it after this podcast.
I also find with like this topic that I tend to see like people taking like these immaterial or idealistic experiences and interpreting them as the ultimate truth, and not also accepting that all of those experiences are filtered through our own cultural lenses and personal experiences and understandings of things. Like encountering an entity in our culture here as Americans or wherever may be interpreted as like, somebody may encounter what they may perceive as the Virgin Mary or something like that, but a different culture may interpret that very differently. And I feel like speaking in absolute truths about those very personal subjective experiences is very difficult, and I see it a lot. Whereas like we can speak in pretty absolute truths about materialist things. And certainly easier to study, but I mean I think studying that subjective interpretation is really important too.
Well, I think this is where it's for people like yourself, like artists, are sort of an important part of the dialogue, because it's a lot of these things can't be described in words, but it can be conveyed a lot better through art, through in its various forms. And so it's kind of in that way it's kind of similar to poetry or something like that. You can dissect the poem in the same way that we might dissect a trip, but that dissection doesn't actually evoke the same thing that the poem itself evoked. Like if you did a criticism of a piece of artwork or a film or whatever. So I think and this comes back to the earlier point, this thing of trying to, talk about things which are not of the same kind of data as like the language itself. So like we're saying, oh, well, why can't you teach me some maths that I don't know? I just think it's not part of the vocabulary of the experience. I'm not talking about like the verbal vocabulary, I just mean like the experiential vocabulary. I just don't think it's supposed to do that. And I think with a lot of these things, even when we're hearing words coming out of the experience, and the words, sometimes they're audible, sometimes it's telepathy or whatever. I'm using telepathy in the loosest possible sense, but even that I think is some interpretation of something. And I think this is where, if it is something like archetypes, then let's say this is a purely local experience. I'm having an inner journey, which is more or less what I kind of believe anyway. Then I don't think my inner subconscious is necessarily having to speak to me through English. And this comes to sort of Jake's point before. The English is something I've learned. It's something that I map on top of. I retell the story in English as part of my sort of inner dialogue. but I can imagine Stone Age Rob with his massive patchy beard, and then could still have the same experience of the same internal narrative, but it's not going to have the English words to it. So the words are I think is a complete bit of post-production that our kind of brains are doing, or even maybe that I'm doing afterwards, you know, like hours later I sit there and think, oh, it actually said this and this to me. No, I might have felt that, but I don't think it actually did say it, although sometimes you absolutely do get. Sorry, go ahead, mate.
This is the problem, I say, with me covering trip reports, and there will always be that element of disbelief, because quite literally the whole process of writing up your experience, it will never get to the center of what actually happened. Like, I mean, I've done my very best. You can be the very best trip reporter of all time, but mate, at the end of the day, just from being a human, you're naturally just going to exaggerate. You're going to probably change things, even unconsciously. So there's no way you can ever sort of perfectly articulate the experience, perfectly represent the feeling of what it was without you also experiencing that itself. And that's also why I say, if you do, let's say, I fit to this one where that guy smoked salvia and he lived for 30 years in another life, and obviously it's very easy to be like, well, it's all fake, man, it's all bullshit. But then the guy in the comments, this is what I really enjoyed about that report. The guy in the comments, he replied to people, they all asked him questions. It's very clear that whether you believe this is possible or not, this seriously affected the guy. And it's like a bit like alien abductions as well. Like, if you ever believe in aliens or not, and you think little green or grey alien boys are coming down, like harvesting our genitals and shit, regardless of whether it actually happens, you look at these people, watch the interviews, whether it happened to them or not materially, or it was all in their heads, it affects them, doesn't it? It actually literally affects them. And these trips affect people, like, it changes their whole lives. This guy who went and lived his whole other life in another reality that was similar to our own, he will never be able to come back from that. And whether it actually physically happened or was just all imagined, it still has an effect on you, and there's no way you can actually fully channel that without experiencing it yourself. And I'm just going to say, I don't really fancy experiencing that, to be fair. I'll just take it on blind faith for now.
For the record, when it comes to experiences like that, I think the experience is real and it's material.
Can you expand a little bit on that, Emily? Or?
That's an experience that person had. Like, that person had that experience. Sure. Like, unless they're lying. But that happened in their brain. And because brains are remarkable and can do things like that.
But that means the brain is generating physical reality, though, isn't it? So does not mean...
Yeah, I could just say magic does things like that too, and it was magic.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying that that's my argument, but that's what it feels like when people use that as a solution. It's like, okay, what does that mean?
It's not a solution. It's
not a solution, but as a definition or better model of reality. It doesn't feel like a better model of reality.
Well, it's a perspective that leads me to ask questions about how the brain is doing that, and that's the value I see in it.
Sure, but what if the brain isn't doing that?
What if I became a pen?
What if by assuming that narrative, you are missing out on a whole other piece of it?
What could I possibly, how can I try to investigate a truth of its magic?
I've never
I'm not arguing.
Experience.
I'm not arguing that it's magic. I'm just saying if you're going into it saying you're staunchly scientific, but right out the gate you're assuming that these experiences are generated in the mind, and you approach everything from that perspective, then you leave yourself open to the possibility that you're missing something, even if you're not. There's other questions that could be asked from different perspectives, and that's why I'm asking them those questions. You know, I don't think that all the answers resolve or lie in scientific studies.
I'm not sure I really understand what you mean by other questions to ask outside of the brain for experiences like that. Can you expand on that? Yeah,
just the assumption that these experiences are being generated solely from the brain.
No, sorry. I must have misspoke. I'm not asking what your problem is with me saying it's in the brain. I'm asking you what other questions we could be asking outside of that explanation to try to find truth.
Well, it's literally every single question that you would be asking in the context of it being stemming from a brain reaction, but applied to literally everything else. Like if it's not coming from the brain, if it's not coming from understood scientific models of reality, then where is it coming from, and what else? Like that's what I'm arguing for, because these things we're connected. Obviously, we're having group hallucinations, whether these are archetypal or actually higher dimensional. Like there's a myriad of different things that could be explained, and none of them are explained in it being just a chemical reaction in a sole person's brain. And I have questions about what if it's not coming from the brain. I think that's a valid question to ask.
I'll just chime in and maybe try and put my own sphere around what Jake's saying. So I spoke to, and I've read both of Andrew Gallimore's books, and I just kind of be interested in knowing what you think of. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, Emily, but one of his things that he writes about is that certainly there is stuff going on in our brain, but then by the introduction of certain chemicals, that there is then a kind of a different vector by which information can enter into it. So at one point we've got a kind of a closed system, and I think the current consensus seems to be that we are modeling reality in our brain. So I'm not literally seeing you guys now. I'm seeing a screen, and my brain is recognizing it's a screen, and it's putting the pieces together and doing a lot of pattern recognition stuff. But then that there is a potential by adjusting brain chemistry to then allow flows of information to come in from somewhere else, and the somewhere else you can go to all sorts of kind of wacky places. And I think in the end of one of his books he talks, is this like hyperdimensional data coming in from Alpha Centauri or something like that. But I mean, would you, and just to tie this back to what Josie said earlier, where Josie seemed to entertain the idea of something like panpsychism or consciousness fields and stuff. So the idea that there could be some kind of information somewhere else which we might sink into. So would that not then provide the possibility of this information coming in from somewhere else, like what Jake's alluded to?
I guess my view on that is that we have a lot more information in our brains than we are consciously aware of. And also, our brains are capable, especially under the influences of altered states of consciousness, to put ideas together in ways that we are not as prone to do while sober. So that's basically my view on it.
Okay. But so did I understand right though that you would entertain something like panpsychism or external sources of consciousness, like that consciousness is not just something that's entirely localized? Because then if there is some kind of consciousness phenomena outside of my head, then would it not then be possible to interact with that somehow, and then that would then provide a kind of a way for these novel interactions happen? Not saying necessarily that it's like another place with physical aliens and Mother Ayahuasca and all that. Forgive me, Mother Ayahuasca.
That's my mum.
But I'm just saying, I think the very hardcore materialist view is like, it's this, it's meat, that's it. There's nothing beyond this outline here. And then I'm just trying to pin down, is that where we're at, or are we allowing for some more exotic things, or is it just purely,
I am open to the idea that there is some field within matter that we do not currently understand or are able to measure with any current instruments or any specific organs that we possess that could be doing things that could be involved in unexplainable things. I'm certainly open to that idea.
Yeah, I don't think we understand everything. That would be a silly thing to claim.
Yeah, we're learning so much.
I suppose then the question would be then, like, where would we close the door then?
Yeah, what's the end point?
There is I think all of us here at some...
There isn't, is there? Because it's infinity, lad.
Yeah, what do you mean by end point? Like,
what is the goal of analyzing the consciousness from a materialist angle? Is it going to get to, is the aim to explain consciousness via science or materialism, or is it to, fuck knows, mate, tell me.
It's just to increase our understanding of the world around us. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a concrete endpoint.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I don't think it has an endpoint, but that's what I'm trying to say is like, surely a finite system, let's say materialism is finite, well, material is finite. If it is truly finite, if everything's truly material, surely there should be a point where it's like, right, we've done it now, we figured it out. But surely that can't. How I don't.
Scientists think that way.
I don't understand. Yeah, I don't understand how. I don't understand how I can have an experience of literally being infinite, like literally being infinite, if I am actually finite. Like surely my nature is infinite, and that I'm breaking through the finite barriers to experience what I truly am. That's why I don't understand how there can be infinity can simulate infinity. Surely it's the other way around, or at least that's what it's like to me.
I think there's kind of a.
You can go, Emily.
I think it's kind of a bit of a I fucking love science sort of meme internet idea of science, that it's just out there finding answers. And when you start to get really more in depth with it, a lot of these things where someone says like, oh, a study says that this is true. And you're like, oh, okay, well, what's the methodology? What other studies have been done? What potential weaknesses do we have here? What potential like blind spots do we have? Like we're trying to get closer and closer to a richer, better understanding that we can hopefully then apply to make people's lives better and make people happier and make people more fulfilled and more self-actualized. And to me, that's my personal end goal. Learn more as much as I can for my life and try to find ways to apply that to improve people's lives.
Yeah, I think there are definitely some scientists who would claim that there is an endpoint to be reached here, whereby all possible knowledge that can be known could be known. Particularly if you are in the very, very materialistic, and then like I described earlier, with that everything is sort of cause and effect. Then by sort of logical definition, you should be able to then get to a point where everything is predictable. And I'm sure I've read that from when I was like a hardcore atheist and I was reading like lots of Dawkins and Krauss and Stephen Hawking stuff.
Love memes.
But certainly at the very simplest level, there's definitely some dudes on my Discord who absolutely believe that once we merge with AI, that we will understand all possibilities of anything ever.
Yeah, I've read a few of them.
At the risk of being a little bit sassy again, people who think that there is an endpoint where we will understand everything have not learned enough to understand how much they don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's why it's called Jake Knows Nothing.
Right, yeah, right. That's the part that I find the most interesting, is just the how large of an area it is left unmapped and unopened, and that's what's exciting to me. And that's really like the heart of what I'm arguing for. Because like, don't get me wrong, I'm playing a pretty strong devil's advocate. I've spent 10 years plus in the medical industry or medical, field. Like I came from that background. I'm the first one to, excitedly read through a study. And I think that there's immense value in that. That's like Rob was saying, and the things that you guys have worked on, like that's the only way that we've developed common language to be able to have, channels and have a community to communicate with in the first place. It's essential for those types of things. But I'm just arguing that there's some kind of meat left on the bone if we're only looking at it that way. And I think that it's equally exciting to look at things through a scientific lens, through a materialism lens, just as exciting as it can be to kind of shirk off all of that and just experience things firsthand and see what you can glean. And that you can also gain just as much insight to the same depth, if not more, without reducing it to language or science. I think that's kind of the best way I can state it.
So I was going with you there for a little while, but then I don't know. For me, language is immensely important. It's something that we can do so much with. It's a very important tool for us to be able to communicate with other people.
Would you say that it's limiting though? Isn't it limiting in some respects? Like just the fact that we only don't, in at least in English, we're very limited on words for describing love. So that's it's limiting right off the bat, right?
But it's also a huge benefit. Here's something. Like there's some evidence to show that when we have terminology for something, then our brain is better at storing information about that thing. It gives us like these mental tag categorizations that are very useful for us, even if they're not encompassing everything. Like it's very, very useful. But what I was going to say is that earlier, it sounds like you were essentially describing a sort of interdisciplinary approach, which I think is very, very important. I think interdisciplinary approaches to these experiences is the only way to really try to seek truth.
I totally agree with that, and I think that's probably part of the problem within the psychedelic community, and certainly I would say any community, is that rather a lot of people tend to fall into one camp or the other camp. And I think I would say I think we're all somewhat playing devil's advocate here, because I think we all sort of dip into, each other's experience. We all understand what
we're all subscribed to each other.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Psychetubers assemble.
But certain people do fall into camp A, camp B, or even camp fucking bananas, and I think that's why it is useful, and this is why I'm quite happy with the materialist label, because I do think there is a value in being able to describe these things in the way that you guys have described them, in the way that, so we can say that this is something that is valuable to a human life, that there is that, hey, just because I am having the experience of being able to fly, I shouldn't actually go and throw myself off the fucking building.
I've tried to do that.
And also just in terms of our psychological well-being, in terms of not falling prey to bullshit and to so there is, I think there is absolutely a value in trying to capture this in whatever language that we have, but also not falling prey to the idea that is kind of like all there is, and that like I said at the beginning, that a lot of these experiences are magical, and using the magical word, but there is a precedent for that kind of stuff happening. Consciousness itself, emotions themselves, psychological dreams are all the precedent for this stuff, and it's only that we're so used to it that it seems like it's like, oh well, that's just what happens, that's what human beings do. But yes, that's what human beings do, and that's a lot different to maybe compared to what jellyfish do. So I mean, jellyfish might struggle to understand why we're dreaming and stuff like that, but to us it's just like, yeah, just do it. Just the meat just turns on at night. I don't know what the fuck goes on. So yeah, I just in that way I kind of tentatively want to keep the door open to some things, but also want to sort of limit the amount of bullshit that can sneak in through the slightly open door. So yeah, that's kind of why I end up in the fence sitting thing. But I suppose a question for all you guys, like, is there I'll do a bit of my Peter Boghossian street epistemology here. Is there something that would like? Is it possible to have a test or something that piece of data that would make you actually go the other way? Since a lot of us have had the experiences of ego deaths and onenesses and unities, and we've all probably had the experience of thinking this is all complete bullshit, and before we'd had any of these experiences. So yeah, I mean, is there something where you could see yourself actually going the other way, and just like completely changing your current stance? Let's just go.
There's no going back for me. There's no going back for me. I'm far too deep down the rabbit hole now.
Eggs are scrambled.
There's no step ladders to get out of this hole. It's just deepening and deepening and deepening. But again, it doesn't mean that I'll become more clouded in my own judgment. Again, I fucking absolutely love your work, Joe's Intramolo. Like, I'm not sat there watching like, look at these materialists, they know absolutely nothing. Like, I'm just like, mate, this is so unbelievably beautiful. Like, and the marriage between again, it's like, no matter what you believe, you take what's given, you take the evidence, and you try to use it to better people's lives. Again, articulating experience like the subjective effect index, like the amount of times I refer to that and use it, even though I take a completely different perspective, it's so valuable for me to be able to articulate my idealistic perceptions through your work. So it's having a massive sort of wide-reaching positive effect. But for me personally, just based upon my own direct experience, and for me in the least egoic way possible, like, I trust my own direct experience more than anything, because I've never experienced like another person's brain or another person's consciousness. I am just me, and every single time I pursue other methods of altering my own consciousness. I just go deeper down the, not even idealistic rabbit hole, but just because it goes beyond that. Because just again, I hate to put myself in this camp, because I'm not. It's just for the sake of the debate. For me, I just trust my own perception of reality and my own theory of everything. So I just won't go back. Not because I'm not open to it. I mean, let's say I get to like my deathbed and then some guy's like, "Oh no, wait, they actually proved it was all in your brain. Like 100%, we've got it right here, the proof." And I'll be like, "Well, it is what it is. Pop my clogs, bye, in a bit."
Yeah, I would say that I'm more loose on it. I as of right now, I feel exactly the way that he just described, where the experiences are too profound to like let go of them fully. But having said that, like no matter what point in time I'm in, I always fully believe my current belief system, like to the fullest, like that's concrete. So it's always subject to change. I'm always learning new things and hearing new perspectives that I find interesting and kind of, you know, try on a new hat for size. I love doing that. I hope I never stop doing that. So yeah, I guess if there's some like really, really profound concrete thing that I can be shown in a material world that better explains my model of reality, which is really just a big question mark, I'm certainly open to that. I just think that right now, as beautiful as the human language is and as much interest as I've gotten from studying things in the scientific world, I'm finding more satisfaction going a more unconventional woo-woo route, and I'm having fun articulating that side.
Awesome. Anybody else? Is this
Sure,
something?
yeah. If there was evidence that experiences that happen under the influence of altered states of consciousness come from outside of the brain, say people astral project and they can go somewhere and look at a deck of cards and see what the card is, that's just a common test for it. If there was anything like that, yeah, I would go with what would be the simplest explanation. I don't trust my brain at all. I've had experiences of infinity plenty of times, but I don't think my brain is actually rendering an infinite amount of experience in a finite time. I think it's rendering the perception of having that experience, and I'm happy to go with whatever the simplest explanation is. I'm not a true believer of anything.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of the same way. I think that like there's a lot of phenomena that perhaps many materialists would doubt that I don't necessarily doubt. And I just have a materialist explanation for it as opposed to more of a woo explanation for it. I'm not doubting anything that is, you know, repeatable, observable, you know, that we have like evidence for. So if we had evidence for something, I'd be like, that's great. That's, you know, part of my view of reality now.
Yeah.
Do you think some of this stuff though, is there an evidence available? Like, because again, if we come away from, you know, the being able to read a card in a different room kind of thing, then is that the kind of information that is actually available? I wonder if that sort of test is even possible, because we're always kind of looking to do it in a very 3D world kind of test, and I don't know if these experiences are kind of operating in that way. But that kind of nicely segues me into the possibility of the DMT laser as some kind of test, and
a laser.
And I'll just give a bit of additional background here. So I think a few of you saw the video I initially put out on the DMT laser. In fact, it was you guys who actually inspired me to go and do the DMT laser. I knew nothing about this, and it was you guys posting in Discord. I thought, oh, okay, I need to do this. But I've actually now spoken to the DMT. I've spoken to the DMT laser guy, and I have a DMT laser on its way. It's going to be arriving like next week.
Get up.
And I was wondering, actually, I was going to talk in the Discord later. Maybe after I finish it, if anybody's interested, I might send the laser around the group and.
Yeah, I'll take it when it gets to the States.
Lasered. Yeah. Okay, we're all getting lasered up to the max.
I'd happily pass it on.
I love lasers, man.
Well, sweet, yeah. Because I mean, after I've had my initial look at it, it would be good to get around this group, and maybe that's something we can discuss later on. But I suppose that the kind of thing though is if I mean, let's talk on that. If the laser revealed what it says it reveals, and for anyone who doesn't know, that it reveals that reality is a simulation by virtue of the code that is displayed. Would my take on it would be, I can see myself ending up believing this, but I wouldn't believe it, I don't think, just by the virtue of seeing it in the way it's described. It would be something that it invokes. And so it's that thing that, and God forbid, I'm almost like terrified that I'm going to end up like sort of believing in the sort of becoming part of the laser cult.
Join us.
But
join the laser.
Could you explain the actual concept a little bit more? Because I'm only vaguely familiar.
Yeah. So there's a guy who, his name's Dan Gola, and he's put together this kind of this custom laser array where if you shine a certain pattern of laser light against a wall, and then you smoke DMT, and quite a lowish dose of DMT, it's not a full breakthrough dose, and then stir at this kind of diffracted pattern on the wall, then he says fairly repeatedly, you will start to see some sort of secret simulation code arise out of the laser pattern, and that in doing so it basically triggers some form of like, I wouldn't say spiritual awakening, but some kind of psychedelic awakening, whereby, similar to kind of what Vivek's described.
I was just about to say a fellow wall starer. I'm glad I'm not alone.
Yeah, exactly. And once those kind of eggs have been scrambled, you can't unscramble them.
No, mate.
And so people are describing this as some sort of like, this is like becoming a parent, or this is like something. It just, once you've crossed the threshold, it's done. And my sort of take on that was, I think it's actually probably some fairly common effect that's going on, possibly accompanied by these you can certainly have feelings of awakening or awakening to some kind of occult knowledge on DMT, and that combined with a fairly repeatable pattern, because it's such a precise laser light that's being used, then it would seem like, yeah, sure, it could look like it's presenting some kind of code. So I was kind of skeptical of it, and I talked to Josie about it, I talked to Andrew Gallimore about it, talked to a few other people about it, and I'm kind of hedging my bets that this is actually a fairly known phenomena. But yeah, this guy's saying, no, once you see the laser, once you've been lasered, there's no unlasering. It's all, that's it. So yeah, the laser, it's on its way, and I'll find out.
Yeah, I'm certainly curious. I could also see, like, whatever, like, information that's portrayed kind of being similar to what Emily talked about with our sort of like geometry in the psychedelic experience being, a mishmash of processes that our brain is interpreting as visual data. I could also just see it being something like that, but I'm also curious to stare at lasers on DMT. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd want to try it on people that aren't aware of the experiment going in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating.
Also, I'm perfectly open to reality being a simulation. If we found out that reality was a computer simulation, I would not be that surprised, to be honest.
Where's the computer, though?
That's the next level
some
up, mate.
hyperdimensional teenager's bedroom.
But what's simulating that, though? That's what I'm saying. It's infinite. It's infinitely recursive. That's the thing about people going about God. Like, well, if God's real, who created God? Like, it's like, mate. Well, God is just God. Just is. God is infinity. It doesn't need a cause because it just is. It creates itself. Like, oh God, I'm going down the rabbit hole again. Fucking someone shut me up.
Simulations
I
all
don't
the way
claim
in.
to have the answers to why there's something instead of nothing. That would be a weird thing to say.
I just think something is nothing. I just think, again, like, it's just symbiotic from my perspective. I was a something, and now I'm a nothing. Just one and the same, innit?
Full on non-dual stuff.
Yeah.
I guess.
But I think with the laser thing, I think my kind of concern is that it actually becomes a kind of like a gimmick. It seems more exotic than what it is, just because it's lasers and it's kind of like opening portals and stuff. And I think it's to me, having sat in plenty of these like traditional ayahuasca ceremonies, that seems to me that the same kind of thing is happening, in that you have people who sit in one of these ceremonies, and although the input that is being given to you is not by a laser pattern, it's by these Icaros. But then it is still, it's encouraging very similar, it's giving everyone a similar set of inputs, and so everyone is generating, so substance plus the inputs of the shaman singing plus the set and setting generates Mother Ayahuasca, generates Shipibo imagery, stuff that doesn't tend to happen in the West.
And Shapiro.
So then now we've got this kind of, a different kind of input, like this laser making a very specific but sort of, pattern on the wall. And same thing, take a substance, read the input, and now this, simulation code is appearing. So it's just it's a twist on the ayahuasca ceremony to me. And that's why I think it's not actually, the laser's not doing anything other than just providing a different kind of input. And if you were sat there,
clarify, I kind of want some more clarification. Are you saying that the laser is basically almost serving as like a very precise and repeatable set and setting for people? Like, is that like just like a very narrow area? If you stare at that, that's like the same set and setting always, and then we have the same hallucination as a result of that pattern. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what he's saying, and I think that's actually a fair way of putting it. Yeah, that if you
just like the same songs being sung.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say even more precise. If you project the exact same pattern, and because you're doing it against like a plain wall, and you get people, like let's just squat and stare at the laser and wait for the code to appear, then yeah, you are creating a very sort of like microclimate set and setting, because all your attention is kind of there. And I think Joss is exactly right. It would be very interesting to see if people would spot it without being primed for it. But then again, sorry, go ahead, Emily.
For me, what this makes me think of is I actually grew up in mega churches and in the Bible Belt, and I was homeschooled. Like I had the full religious upbringing, and there are specific things that certain churches will do to induce spiritual states of mind. So I've been aware of that kind of thing, the fact that works since very early in life. Like they will like kind of have like a hush go over things, and then they'll have this deep thrumming sound as the preacher starts to speak, and it's very powerful. And there's a lot of power in those kinds of things, and yeah, it's something that, like, I guess, like, Josie and I are both certainly toying with the idea or suspecting that mystical experiences, spirituality, is a function that the human brain does. And totally there are things that can induce that. And so that seems very plausible to me. That's not at odds with any of my view.
Yeah.
So the laser thing is kind of reminiscent to me of the Dream Machine and other consciousness experimental devices, I guess you could call them, like the iMask that Josie experienced pretty recently with Andres. Sort of, there have been experiments with different sort of visual feedback devices that have kind of induced like trance-like states and stuff like that, and I could see it's serving a similar function, obviously amplified by DMT. What that leads from there, I don't know, but at the very least, I could see it like sort of amplifying certain functions in conscious experience, especially while on a substance.
I wonder if we're going to start seeing like the emergence of kind of new forms of like technology cults kind of thing, where the kind of like the covenant is the laser, or the gadget or whatever. So it would be like we've kind of
iPhone owners.
I mean, it could be, but like this is kind of like a form of like techno shamanism, where it's like
sonic screwdriver lad.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of going receiving the wafer, the communion wafer, you go and gaze upon the sacred laser. And if it does do like kind of what Emily said, like if it does reliably induce a spiritual experience, and for a lot of people, spiritual experiences are desirable, then I mean that's kind of like a very interesting thing, because we do put these spiritual experiences on some sort of pedestal. But if it is just something that we can turn on and off with a laser or an eye mask, then
preachers hate this one simple trick.
If it benefits your life and your mind and your consciousness and allows you to share a greater degree of love, then who cares what form it comes in? Again, there's a lot of in the psychedelic community, there's a bit of like the elitist sort of pure mindset where it's like, oh, you didn't do it in this way, well, it's less valid and it won't produce all these things. It's like, mate, everything's relative. Everyone has different subjective experiences. It's like, mate, if you want to fucking look at the laser wall and you can experience God, then go for it. As long as you don't
create like a 2,000-year long fucking book story about the laser and start a whole religion about it, then it's fine.
Laser Christ.
He's just in code, right? Literal numbers.
Just a matrix, isn't it?
Yeah, he describes it as more like sort of like some combination of Japanese alphabet and sort of like Hebrew and something similar to the kind of like the secret language thing that Gabe and I sort of are fascinated with. But
it did concern me that he had never seen the secret language before this phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was thinking. It was something like that he's seeing that accompanied by these kind of like spiritual awakenings that happen at the same time, and that it's just kind of inducing a sense of particular awe and mystery about that one thing, and then he's just kind of cannot be convinced otherwise. And then I was chatting with Josie about this, or I think I was in one of the comments on the Discord, and I kind of put to him, do you think is it possible that you just fall in prey to McKenna syndrome?
Machine elves.
Well, yeah, but it was more like with the time wave zero stuff, because as we know, like McKenna went balls deep into this complete fucking waste of time. But at the time, he was absolutely convinced by it, to the point where he even stretched his own sort of ethical and sort of boundaries and to make it fit. And so I kind of. Yeah,
that's a problem with the idol worship of McKenna, in it. People get lost in his words, a bit like in a biblical sort of sense, where they're like, oh, well, he said it and he's gone deeper than everybody because he said he did, so surely he's right. And then, you've got to have that humility, haven't you?
Well, I think that it comes back to the thing of, I think McKenna was most appreciated when he was waxing poetic, and at the point where he tried to sort of codify into hard language and hard mathematics, he completely went up his own arse. And I think that's why I say I don't think these experiences properly rendered down into written word. Now that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. I mean, everybody here tries, but I think we're trying about the characteristics around it, and but I think like the central, I can't think of a better word than wiggliness right now. So the central wiggliness, I think, is just kind of uncodable into English. But
that's why spiritual gurus often speak in riddles, because they've sort of transcended the realm of language, and the only way they can sort of wake you up, obviously there's that term very loosely, but they've got to sort of like wink back at you to make you to realise that it's beyond words. It's more about the feeling, the inner workings of the mind, rather than just
synchronicities.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll try like poking at that a little bit. Are you familiar with the idea of cold readings?
Yeah.
I'm not. Go on.
So
Darren
cold
Brown
readings,
stuff, like.
It's like stuff that like people who do like psychic readings, for example, will do, and it's starting out with fairly broad things and seeing what resonates. And people can appear to be reading someone's mind by using these techniques. And people who don't believe in the technique can do it as well. Like, don't believe that it's like, psychic. Like people who don't believe in psychic things can make someone feel very, very strongly that they have experienced having their minds read by a psychic.
Oh, right, yeah.
Through the use of these techniques. And it's really using the ambiguity of language to let people get what they want out of it. And I would say that's more likely, for my perspective, something that could be going on with that.
Well, you think that's what's going on with? Sorry,
is that with the gurus? Is that the
yeah, with the gurus speaking in poetry? Yeah.
But I think there's a distinction
I just think
between
they're just talking vague shit. I just think they've got like a playbook of vagueness and just play it, just spiel it out just to keep you on the hook.
I think they've just realised. I think there's a difference between like these psychics on TV, who are obviously grifters. I mean, a lot of them are going to be grifters, and then I think there's a massive distinction between them and actual like spiritual gurus who say are probably actually experience something beyond the self. I think a lot of these psychics on TV are literally just trying to manipulate people for some form of like egoic gain. But spiritual gurus, like you say, they are just talking in very vague nonsense, because I think they've just sort of realised, right, well, I can't explain what I've seen via words, so I may as well just wink at you.
People can, in essence, be doing the same techniques while fully having good intentions, fully believing what they're doing as well.
Yeah. I mean, we're putting kind of gurus all into one box here.
That's what I'm saying. You can't generalize.
There's a broad spectrum of like, that you sort of, American sort of televangelists through to, someone who's sat in a nappy on a mountain somewhere in India or something like that.
Yeah.
And even, a broad spectrum of genuine believers and complete bullshitters all throughout. You've got, people who call themselves shamans in Peru, who are just some guy who's just, gone and bought a tub of ayahuasca, and then you've got people who are genuinely sort of committing their life to this.
Yeah.
And, it's the whole sort of guru thing is very, very broad. But just in regards to the cauldron stuff you're talking about, Emily, was that something that you came across within your was that used within the church that you grew up in?
No, that wasn't. It's not related to the church stuff, but
okay.
It's just something that I guess when I did start to doubt what I had been fed through my life in terms of like what truth is and like this religious aspect, I looked into a lot of different things, and really what cinched things for me to go in a more materialist perspective was realizing that the brain is capable of doing these things. And that was a very profound realization for me as someone who was really only exposed to people who had the same worldview and a specifically religious one. Like that's something that's like very, very profound to me, very, very important to me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and to sort of tie that to my own sort of thoughts, and also what Vivek said earlier, I think I do tend to go with the idea that our brains are kind of is modelling my personal reality. That I'm taking all these sensory inputs. It's kind of I'm perceiving a kind of a model, and the fact that model can have an experience of infinity really just shows the power of the capability, and that in itself, like we said, it's amazing. It's not something that should just be just it just does that. It really is that me can experience sort of infinity all the way down, or that there is I am one and everything, and then still come back to reboot the operating system and be. Yeah, I mean, absolutely amazing.
So inspiring.
And if that's it is, man. Yeah, and if that's purely as a result of the meat, so be it.
Yeah, it doesn't devalidate the profundity of what is it? It's again, we're just all coming from a different perception.
Yeah, that's how it doesn't devalue it at all. Sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I have one like notable example when I started to get into psychedelics that took my because similar to Emily, I grew up like hardcore fundamentalist Christian, divorced from that. But then I had an experience in college that I think is relevant, where essentially, like, boil it down as much as possible because I don't want to ramble. But growing up, my neighbor, his name was Jack. We were very close. He was an old man, traditional Baptist guy. And Jack also had a Jack Russell named Russell, like the dog. So it was Jack Russell. But anyway,
this is Vivek's Infinity are going all the way down.
Here we go again.
But essentially, we were very close, and up until college, he was in good health, and I went to university like about 4.5 hours away, and he was put in a home at one point because his health was failing, and didn't really have contact with him for quite a while. But one night, I dreamt that I was sitting in his kitchen with him, and he started to slip through the floor, kind of no clipping in a game, and I was holding on to him, and I realized I had to let him go, and he fell through the floor, and I woke up instantly, and it was like, Jack's dead. Like I knew for a fact that he died overnight, and then I ended up like looking at my phone, and I got a message that he had died in his sleep that night. And that for me, like that was pre-experimenting with a lot of things like that, and it was a very there are ways that I could potentially explain something like that, coincidences or whatever, but it was a very strong, like, I woke up with that distinct feeling of knowing something had happened, and like how I received that information, whether it was a premonition, something metaphysical, or something coincidental, I don't know, but it was at least a very strong indicator to me that there was at least some way of receiving information that was not traditionally accepted in that way. And it was very profound in that way, in a way that like being on a psychedelic can be explained by being on a psychedelic, but that at least to me was a bit different.
Yeah. I mean, I think just in that example, I mean, it could have been, if we go with like the kind of Internet of Souls thing, then, and that is a valid form of data, then that could be that, or it could be if we are modeling reality internally, then you have a model of Jack. And I all the time I'm talking to people in my head. I'm like arguing with people, in my head because I've modeled them, and I can model them to pretty accurate things. So if you're aware of Jack and you're aware of his health and you're aware that he's at some point he's going to pass on, then it could be just a very accurate model that was created. And then I suppose this thing. Well, is that any less kind of real? Is that connected to the internet of consciousness fields? I mean, go wherever.
Yeah, for me, that it was like regardless of how I arrived at that information, it was like no less profound. Whether I took a serious materialist stance on it, it was still like a holy shit kind of moment. I
can totally relate, mate, because I lost my mother at a very early age, and as I got to like my current age, and I started trying to deal with some of that, I had to sort of basically put together an image of my mother in order to be able to have dialogue with that and resolve issues. Now, I know that that data is coming from. So no, I did not know this person. I've got no memories of this person, but it doesn't mean that experience was any less. In fact, it was ultimately profound. It was like for me, life changingly profound. But I'm aware that it's probably complete fiction. But then I could have people could say, "Oh, well, no, it's genetic memory. It's written into your cells and stuff. You took the encoding."
It's memes.
Could be. It's all memes, or or back to your point, Jules. I was using an archetype of the mother. The mother is an archetype. So it could be any of those things. I don't know, but it's no less profound, and I don't give a shit. It accomplishes what it needs to accomplish within my kind of human experience. So if someone says to you like, "Rob, you just made that up," okay.
Yeah, doesn't invalidate the profundity of it at all.
Yeah. Cool. So I mean, I'd open the floor. Like, if anyone's, is there any sort of like closing comments that anyone would want to make? Because I appreciate with sort of time is marching on.
Yeah, sure. I just want to mention that I did not go into the psychedelic experience as a hardcore materialist. I actually think I have a stronger sense of magical thinking instincts than the average person. I do consider myself to be quite spiritual, but I think of it more in something that's in line with maybe secular Buddhism. And growing up, I believed in the paranormal, in ghosts, in near-death experiences, in all of this stuff. And I went into psychedelics with that mindset still kind of in my brain. But the more I tripped over hundreds and hundreds of different experiences, hundreds of different compounds as well, it just became increasingly apparent to me that the brain is more than capable of rendering profound spiritual experiences. And I don't think that devalues it in the slightest.
I've got to say, Joseph, you are one of the I think the only people I've ever met who, like, the more they tripped, the more hardcore sort of like.
That's why you're such an intriguing character. That's why I love to hear about your perspective.
Yeah. Normally it goes completely the other way. You broke your brain. You did too much drugs.
I'm fucked.
Anyone else want to add a sort of a closing comment before we wrap?
I just wanted to say that anyone who's in the same boat as me and my boy Jake, that just don't. If you can go down the rabbit hole as far as you want, but don't close yourself off to other perspectives, because if you really care about consciousness, you really are on the sort of all it's all infinity sort of hype train that we're on. You wouldn't close yourself off to understanding other things, because I mean, it's pretty antithetical to the idea of being infinite if you're going to close yourself off to other areas of life. So yeah, just be aware, have the balance, and try and be rational, and don't lose yourself in either camp, because you'll quickly fall down that nihilistic cesspit and not be very happy.
Actually,
I like that.
Sort of a mirroring thing for materialists. Don't discount phenomenology and people's experiences, because that is data that is very useful, very real, and it's very short-sighted to deny that.
Something well said. Jake, anyone want to add?
Yeah, no, just to kind of like go further down the rabbit hole on our side. Like, if you're gonna sit on this side of the camp and take the heat for being, the crazy hippie, then live it to the fullest and acknowledge that every other person on this fucking panel is a god as well. Like, all of your points are just as valid, just as impactful, just as meaningful, and just as core truth as what I view it as. If I'm going to take this position and live it to the fullest, then I'm going to acknowledge that, just because I think things this way doesn't mean it's true. I like it, so it feels true, and it's true for you guys too.
Got to be authentic, haven't you, to yourself?
Yep. No, any closing statements?
I think kind of related to like everything that we've just been talking about, but also the laser and the language and stuff like that. I think like taking these sorts of experiences as profound, as significant, but also like looking at say like these transcendent languages and stuff like that, and maybe understanding it through the lens of like, that may tell us something about how language acquisition or development in humans even happened, which it in of itself is, if there's a hint at something there and how we even develop language in the first place, I think that is entirely as profound as it being angel languages or something. But I don't really have a hard stance on either of that. But I think just how, like, what we do with the information is as important as the information to me with all of this.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree. And I think from, my own sort of like closing, I appreciate all you guys and all of the different viewpoints. And I certainly think it's worth us, exploring these things just for the sake of well, first of all, for the enjoyment of it, for the ability to try and sort of, understand the experience and then try and, stack up these experiences. I think, looking into, I don't think it's controversial to say looking into psychedelics or consciousness is a fairly sort of a new thing, and I think the more we can understand about it, the better. But I do sort of feel like at some point it's going to cause a kind of I think it feels like we're going to have to do a jump beyond our current paradigm. I think our current sort of thinking is fairly sort of two-dimensional, prior to a lot of the consciousness research and stuff like that. And I think as that sort of, whatever that next leap happens, I certainly don't think we're going into the realms of magic. I think whatever happens is not magic. I think it's just going to be, it's part of sort of natural phenomena. It's just that's something, like I say, we don't have the tools to measure or the model to measure or it would just not develop the kind of abstract thought to be able to do it. So I think that's coming. Maybe that's something that's going to be tied into sort of, AI will teach us a thing or two about our own consciousness, and perhaps the way that we learn language will sort of become more apparent with these things. And maybe that's another vector for these kind of techno-shamanism churches of the fusion of AI with the sort of the custom-generated compound that's tailored to my DNA and all this kind of shit. And before we know it, we're just plugged into the Matrix and all that stuff. But, so yeah, I think it's all interesting, it's all awesome, and I just wanted to say thank you all so much for offering your opinions, and I'm going to clip the fuck out of Jake versus Emily later on. I've got to go, man.
I was absolutely buzzing off at me.
Check out this idealist versus this materialist and go to war. So,
and it is all love.
Guys,
these conversations are so fun.
I know.
Yeah, like I really was just
Very
joking around.
exciting.
Like no offense intended.
No,
I'm
we
going
know.
to cry
And
myself to sleep
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I'll cuddle up with you, mate. Don't worry.
Oh, thank you, brother.
Materialist guilt.
no, I think we all know it's done in good faith, and we're all sort of, like I say, we're all playing a little bit of devil's advocate here.
Well, I'm
and we're all
literally
sort
the
of,
mouthpiece of the Antichrist, so I've sort of got to do it.
well, that's true.
Oh hell.
Fucking right, son.
And on that
Not all
note,
of us can be that lucky.
maybe the Antichrist could see us out. Vivek,
Right.
do you want to see us out with some profane words that would close this ceremony?
Yeah, well, all these materialist
Speak in
scum,
tongues or something.
all these materialist scum, they need to go and have a long, hard look in the mirror and think about what they've done. Because if they don't, I'm gonna come and slice them up.
How can mirrors be real?
No master,
if...
brother, no master.
It had to be said. We were all thinking it. But,
Well,
can
that
we?
bombshell-
Do we have a clue for what we could possibly do next to leave people thinking? Are we going
I
to
don't
get
know.
Laserman? Are we going to get Laserman on?
Well, first of all, we're definitely going to have the laser thing once it's done the rounds. But I guess this will do things. Anyone has got any ideas for topics you would like to see us covering, our sort of rambling, just going off on tangents all the time way, stick it in the comments below, or post it in one of our Discords, or send it to one of our channels or something, and we'll try and tackle that as best as we can.
Bless up.
And on that note,
Cool.
cheers everyone, it's been awesome, and thank you so much, and let's
Thanks
catch
for
up
having
soon.
us.
It was all a dream.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.